It's September, and the last summer vacation weekend is over with, and now we march on to soon, where it will be fall. And in the meantime, we're enjoying some nice weather over a good chunk of the U.S. And so we'll talk about that, the activity in the tropics or lack thereof. It's all on the table tonight on this Labor Day Joe and Joe Weather Show. And you can support the Joe and Joe Weather Show if you shop on Amazon. Use the Amazon link that's pinned at the top of the chat board, and it's also on the description to this video. You can buy whatever it is you're looking for. You don't have to buy what's on my specific page. Just use the search bar, drop your heart out, and Amazon will throw back a little bit of coin, and it doesn't cost you a dime. So we appreciate that. We do appreciate your support. And I think you might appreciate seeing the two of us. So let me do a little switching. There we go. And here we are on this Monday. It took a little while this morning for you to get out of the clouds because they were kind of hanging around a bit, but eventually it did clear out and went to mostly sunny, and the humidity dropped, and now you're getting set for a pretty chilly night up your way.
Well, I'm assuming that the temperatures are going to be dropping even into the 50s for New York City, and
Yes, that is correct.
and into the 40s across a wide section of suburbia, especially well north and west over in the rural sheltered valley sections. And it looks like it's going to be a nice clear night. And really, fall has suddenly arrived, Joe. Yesterday was a warm and very humid day, but the humidity was pushed on out as most of us slept last night by a cold front. Actually, the second of two fronts. It was interesting. The first front that came on through Saturday night, Sunday morning, came with showers and even an isolated rumble of thunder. But once that first front moved through, it pretty much swept out most of the moisture that the second front would have needed to produce its own share of shower activity. And all we had to deal with yesterday in the afternoon hours was sunshine. Dew points were in the upper 60s to near 70. So again, it was a very humid day, but it was a warm day. The humidity dropped overnight, and turned out to be a very lovely day out there today with kind of a blender mix of sunshine and puffy fair weather clouds. It looks like we're going to have some nice weather for the next few days coming up.
Well, I discovered today, Joe, I know this already happened to you a few weeks ago, but today is the last day of an 8 o'clock sunset for me. But so for those of you who are thinking, well, how come the sun is setting so late? Well, that's because I'm not that far from the central time zone. Okay. So, because I'm at 84 degrees west. The sunrise this morning, because, so I get up in the morning, I get up early. I'm usually not paying close attention, just sort of waiting for the coffee to kick in. And then I'm on the computer doing stuff for about an hour. My sunrise this morning, I went to the door to take the dog out for a walk at 7 o'clock, and it was still pitch black. My sunrise is now, tomorrow morning is at 7:11. So
Yeah,
it's already past the 7 o'clock. So in another 20 days, it's going to be more nighttime than daytime.
it's very weird that Atlanta, for example, and you too, Joe. You're absolutely right. You should really be in the central time zone and not the eastern time zone. But it's a quirk. I guess the reason why you're in the eastern time zone is to not screw things up. You know, for commuters going from Boston to New York to Washington, they assume that Atlanta is in the east or along the eastern seaboard. But again, you're well to the west of the 75th meridian, which delineates where the eastern time zone is. So you really should be in the central time zone. And there are other quirks around the country. There's a place in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Escanaba, Michigan, and they also are in the Eastern time zone. Escanaba is a little ways to the north of Chicago, and they have some strange sunrise and sunset times too, because again they're in the Eastern time zone. So in the wintertime, their sun comes up very late, well after 8 o'clock in the morning, and Like, for example, for you, you said 7:11 was the time of sunrise. If you were on Central Time, it'd be 6:11, and it would make a lot more sense for that to happen as opposed to 7:11 now. I
Well,
would suppose.
they got
I
to
suppose
draw. They have to draw the line somewhere.
when you get to the time when we're about to switch over from daylight back to standard time, the final day of daylight time, the sun for you is probably rising at like what, 8:30 in
About eight. It'll be around 8:15, 8:20.
the wild. That's wild.
Yeah,
Well,
but
anyway,
it is. But then I can't go to the dog park until it's daylight. So my my arrival at the dog park instead of being at 8 a.m. will be closer to 9:30. Especially, and the other thing, you're probably going to beat me to for the first time since I've been down here. I've been beating you to the first 50s, the first 40s, the first 30s. You may wind up beating me to the first 40s.
it's conceivable. Yeah, it is. And quite in contrast to other areas of the country, I know that out in the northern plains, the Rockies, like for example in Montana, I saw that the high temperature for Billings today was something like 102 with a dew point of 115. I mean, not a dew point, but
Heat
a
index.
115. And the Climate Prediction Center is suggesting that there's going to be extreme heat out there, not Arizona or New Mexico or Florida or whatever, but out in the upper plains in the coming next 6 to 10 days.
Yeah, and right now I just put up the watches and warnings map. The first frost warnings are up. I'm sorry, the first frost advisories are up for a handful of counties in north central and northeastern New York, and also a couple of counties in southwestern New York, and let's call it north central PA. So you usually see those first frosts in Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, and so on. But no, they're in the Northeast this September. You can write that down. And there's not a whole lot happening on the watches and warnings map. A lot of red flag warnings up in parts of the Northwest, in Idaho and Oregon, and over into southwestern Montana. And as Joe indicated, probably some extreme heat coming there because that's where the ridge is now. It's in the west. We have excessive heat watches and excessive heat warnings and heat advisories up for central and southern California and into southern Arizona, and also a few counties in southeastern New Mexico and a couple of counties in West Texas. We've got flood watches in central Texas. Otherwise, it's pretty quiet in much of the eastern half of the United States, and no wonder if you look at the satellite loop, there's just not a whole lot going on. Skies are, either clear or at least partially clear from the Dakotas across the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, into the Mid Atlantic and into the Northeast, also into the Southeast. We do have a few thunderstorms tonight in coastal South Carolina. You can see the lightning strikes there, just inland of the coast, from from southwest to northeast, and also a few scattered storms in northern Florida. There were more cells earlier, some more thunderstorms there that have popped up. Looks like some more sea breeze front action. Persisting moisture in the western Gulf of Mexico, producing some thunderstorms and some downpours along the Texas Gulf Coast into Louisiana, and some heavier cloud cover back through West Texas and into southern New Mexico. As we check out the radar, the Northeast is quiet, save for a few showers up in Maine. You can see the showers and storms in coastal North and South Carolina, the clusters of showers and storms in Florida, and the stuff that's along the Texas coast. And actually, the radar is fairly loaded. When you go north and west of San Antonio up into central and northwest Texas, there's actually quite a bit of rain going on there, and some heavy rain at that in some places. You got the green boxes with flash flood warnings up. And we've got the beginnings of showers and thunderstorms up in Idaho and Montana and parts of Oregon and Nevada, Utah, and scattered around parts of Colorado and Wyoming. The Storm Prediction Center has a marginal risk up in Idaho and into eastern Oregon. Otherwise, the rest of the country really is doing quite nicely, thank you. Nothing except for general thunderstorm activity in parts of the southeast. I don't know why they have it as far north as they do in Georgia, because not going to see anything here in North Georgia, and also from Louisiana back into southern New Mexico. For tomorrow, next couple of days, It's all in the west: Montana, Wyoming, Utah, eastern Idaho, northwest Colorado, uh, except for the Gulf Coast, the east, the Midwest, the middle and upper Mississippi Valley, back into the plains, nice and quiet, and no tornado, no elevated tornado risk is indicated. And on day three, moves a little bit further to the east, into eastern Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, much of Nebraska, on up into South and North Dakota and Minnesota under a marginal risk of severe weather. It's amazing how at the turn of the calendar, Joe, September has a reputation for the most part as being a bit of a quiet month, particularly in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, and even here where I am. And it's kind of playing according to plan here with the way the pattern is. That this might be the story for at least this week.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree. And it's so nice actually to get rid of all of that humidity for more than just a day or two. I mean, oh, this whole summer we did have our breaks from the moderate to high level dew points, but it was only for about a day or so. This time around, it looks like well, we had day one today, and it looks like for much of this week, the humidities and dew points are going to be tolerable. Next chance, it looks like Joe of any kind of wet weather may not come until either the end of the week or sometime, unfortunately, over the course of next weekend.
Birder Lady, Joe, Birder Lady hits the tip jar, and Ken Musillo hitting the tip jars tonight. Thank you both for hitting super chat. By the way, welcome to everybody on the chat board tonight, and for those of you who are watching in the background, welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. We took a long weekend, and we're back tonight. Normally, we're on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. and the occasional Friday and Saturday when there are storms around, but we don't seem to be seeing any storms around. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. And of course, if you do like the show, hit the like button. Okay, rainfall. Now, this is all this coming weekend, which, I've already gotten the protests from, that certain person on Facebook, Joe, SB, who likes to, apparently wants to lead a crusade to ban all precipitation period, especially on weekends. Well,
I remember there was you and I are old enough. There was a cartoon way back that was used to be on Channel 5 regularly. They used to show the Harvey Toons, and one of the characters was little Audrey, and there was a little Audrey was a precocious little girl, and in one particular episode or cartoon that was about 7 minutes long, she was upset about the fact that here she wanted to go out to play, and it was raining very hard, and she was very upset. And she made a wish. She said, "I wish it would never, ever, ever rain again." And apparently, somebody up there heard her, and it stopped raining. In fact, it got so bad that the drought lasted. Much of the everything was drying up. The flowers were dying, or whatever. She actually, at the end of the cartoon, she had to make a trip to the where the rainmaker was, and had to beg the rainmaker to make it rain again. And then she started singing, "Those April showers may come your way."
your way,
She
they
started
bring forth
feeling,
flowers that bloom in May.
and the way she was singing, the rainmaker began to shed some tears, and then she started peeling onions. And then the rainmaker really started to cry, and he started crying so much that there was a tremendous deluge and everything. And he, in that one big cry, he made up for all of the rain that we lacked in the previous days and weeks and months since she made the wish. Anyway, we should never wish or hope for no rain. We always can use the rain. We just like to allocate it in certain situations, like the middle of the week instead of the weekends, and not
Right.
too much. Not where, like in the case of Dennis Cassie, you're gonna get your basement flooded. That kind of situation. But it is kind of nice that we can go for several days now without having to deal with rain. But again, our next shot, it looks like, will be later on this week or the weekend.
And in fact, just going back to the rainfall map, sizable rains for much of eastern Canada, by the way. WPC's got 1.5 to 2.5 or even 3 inch amounts in Ontario and Quebec province, including Montreal. From Maine down to, oh, let's say Maryland, we're looking at anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to some areas of 1.5 inches plus. It also picks up from the Carolina coastline down to South Georgia and across Florida, several to as much as some 5 to 6 inch rain amounts in this zone, and that carries west to southeast Louisiana. Also, some heavier rains along the Texas coast. They lessen a bit but still ample when you go into central Texas, 1.5 inch plus areas there. But from the plains to the west coast, we're talking anywhere from just a few hundredths to maybe a tenth or maybe a couple of patches there of 1/4 of an inch. So we're kind of seeing what the upper air pattern is. If you didn't actually look to see what the pattern looks like and you just had this map, you could pretty much figure out that, well, we've got a ridge in the west and we have a trough in the east. But I want to touch on the tropics here for just a moment because um, over the last few days, there are people who are hurricane fans, let's call them, and those who watch tropical weather who may or not saying that they're fans of seeing hurricanes, but they're getting equally, um, how shall we say, perplexed over the fact that there's really been an absolute lack of activity. And Jason Schaefer is on the chat board tonight. Um, if you're on Facebook, I'm going to see if I can find this post because I thought he did. I thought it was Jason did an excellent post about uh, what's going on with the tropics, and I'm going to try and find it here. Uh, Jason, so I want to read. It was well written. Uh, of course. You mm,
I mean, from what I was able to see, Joe, you take the long range with a bit of a pinch of salt or whatever, if you will. I mean, there might be it looks like there might be something near the Yucatan Peninsula about a week from now. And there's another possible development. This is according to the GFS in the Gulf of Mexico that might have a say in the weather along the Gulf Coast about the third week of September. But it looks like overall it's going to continue to be relatively quiet in the tropics.
Yeah, well, specifically with respect to the tropical Atlantic. I'm sorry, Jason. I can't seem, of course, I can't seem to find your Facebook post. Of course, I'll probably find it as soon as we get off the air. I'm just doing a quick scroll on my other monitor to see if I can find it here. And I'm thinking it's probably not going to come up because I saw it earlier today. But anyway, just to summarize, Joe, there's a lot of things going on in Africa right now that are a little bit
Weird.
bizarre, weird. Yeah, I think that would basically describe it. In fact, I saw that apparently it is being not by me, but it is being called a million year event. And I'm running the surface map from Africa. So what I did was I've got 10 degrees north and 20 degrees north in those purple lines that go east to west. So this is where you would normally see tropical waves come off somewhere between that zone and then move off the African coast and pass near the south of the Cabo Verde Islands. But what seems to be happening is, um, look at this low that's in, I think it's back in Liberia, and then runs up. It's way north of there. It's like up at 25 degrees north. And you're getting these waves that are running along 10 north, but they don't seem to have much punch in them. But the other amazing thing about this is that you can see green there in Africa, where the Sahara Desert is. And yes, it's raining in the Sahara Desert. Now, it does rain on occasion in the Sahara Desert, but there are parts of that desert that uh, maybe it rains once every 10 years or once every 20 years or even once every 50 years. So this is unusual, but the fact is, here's just the total precip over the next um, 16 days. I mean, you're talking, you know, a fairly large area here of half-inch plus, inch and a half plus. There's even an area of 3 to 4 inch rainfall amounts spread over for the next 16 days. Now, in that zone south of the Cabo Verde Islands, you are seeing some ample precip, and there are waves that are moving along. But apparently, there's some kind of cold current that's moved its way down from the Canary Islands southward. And we noticed last week we were talking about the fact that there was a fairly deep trough off the African coast. And I'm just going to roll this back now, just look at the upper air. And, there is a fair amount of shear that is going on, or at least there was. Actually, everywhere south of 15 degrees north is just loaded with all sorts of easterly shear. Now, it does get, briefly disappears only to reappear as we move through this week. You can see all that shear there, and actually it's all easterly shear. Is that all easterly shear? Yeah, it looks like all easterly shear there that is off the African coast. And, moving along, I mean, I just don't see, it doesn't look all that favorable for anything coming out of the tropical Atlantic anytime soon. And I think that, we were saying all last week, this whole idea that 17 to 24 forecast, the 24 now is we'd have to have two named storms every 8 or 9 days in order to get to that 24 number between now and the end of November. That to me seems almost impossible. So, and maybe the 17, I mean, the 17 is not impossible, but every day that goes by that we don't have a named storm makes that a difficult reach indeed. And I'm not seeing anything in the short or medium range that's going to change that view for the tropical Atlantic. Now, there might be something that'll try to form in the Northwest Caribbean or in the Southwest Gulf, as you indicated. But I mean, as far as the Cabo Verde season, it may not be producing much, if anything at all.
No, I was very surprised that the latest update by the National Hurricane Center or Colorado State University. I don't know who is now in charge of making these projections, but I was very surprised that they didn't lower the number significantly for the prediction because, as we've been saying, you said, Joe, last week we got into this discussion, but leading up to even last week, we were saying that it really didn't look like the kind of a pattern that would loan itself to anything above normal, maybe near normal, but not above normal. And the way things are continuing to look, unless we have a really wild and woolly end of September and October, this is going to fall way short of the projections that were made going back to the beginning of the season. That this was going to be one of the more memorable. I mean, I saw more than a few projections saying that this was going to be a year that was going to be significant or similar to 2005 when we ran out of names. It doesn't look like that at all, at least at this particular juncture.
I've got Jason. Thanks for sending me that link because I want to read this because I really think it really goes right to the heart of all of this. Uh, uh, Analysis of the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season so far. At this point, it's nearly impossible for those preseason forecasts of 22 to 30 named storms and 10 to 13 hurricanes from the major forecasting entities to verify. So let's discuss if those predictions were justified. And his answer to that is yes and no, but more no. So the yes part, two main ingredients taken into account when forecasting Atlantic hurricane season or ocean water temperatures in the ENSO, the El Nino La Nina. As you probably heard, water temperatures are extremely warm throughout the Atlantic basin, and that continues, by the way. Also, La Nina was forecast to develop before the summer began, which usually leads to less wind shear through the Atlantic basin and more favorable conditions for tropical cyclone development. Historical data and climatology does prove that La Nina generally favors more active seasons. So, in the end, warm ocean temperatures in La Nina should mean an active season. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Now, let's discuss the now. Yeah, 2 plus 2 equals 4. However, history has also shown that tons of unpredictable phenomena can occur. Quite a few of them have occurred this season. First, the development of La Nina is delayed. I'm going to finish this up in just a second. I just want to
Well, they've been
bring us
saying that they
bring us
opened
back full screen here.
the window of opportunity for La Nina when they made the projection some weeks ago. The update was anytime from August through October is when they expected La Nina to develop. It's looking more and more, Joe, that if we do get a La Nina, it looks like it's going to be a relatively weak or relatively short-lived La Nina. It doesn't really look like anything out of the ordinary, and we're still waiting officially for it to form. Here we are, early September, still waiting for the La Nina, and again, with the lack of a La Nina, which would help to, pump up the hurricane activity, we're seeing the threat of hurricanes and tropical cyclones in the Atlantic Basin and the Caribbean at a rather low level. We're only up
Right.
to the on the we're only up to
It,
five.
it, 5 storms. And by the way, uh, oh, now I forgot what I was going to say. Let me finish what Jason wrote. Second, the warmer temperatures. Oh, what I was going to say was, uh, we don't at the very least we have neutral conditions, and neutral conditions should be favorable for tropical cyclone development. Maybe not off the wall tropical cyclone development, but at least on par with what we should get back should get to at least normal. However, quite a few of the La Nina's delayed. Second, warmer temperatures have caused the ITCZ, that's that zone between 10 degrees north and 15 degrees north, where you get tropical waves move along. It's caused that zone to migrate to a much higher latitude than normal, causing its storm systems to dry out in the Sahara in the Saharan dust cloud coming off the African coast. And he's got images there. If you follow him on Facebook, you can see. Um, uh, Lower precipitation over Africa has caused the dust to be more excessive and extensive and persistent. In September, yet tropical waves are still fighting off dust. Lastly, last Atlantic La Nina developed, an Atlantic La Nina developed, which climatologically slows the development of Cabo Verde tropical waves. In my opinion, that's Jason's opinion. When forecasting the Atlantic hurricane season, unpredictable phenomena should be taken into account. Unpredictable phenomena are taken into account in everyday forecasting, like when severe thunderstorms are predicted as likely, but not guaranteed due to the hit or miss cellular nature of thunderstorms. So while an active season was justified, the apocalyptic numbers warrant. So anyway, but you do make a final point. This final point is, um, even if the system underperforms, if God forbid two major hurricanes impact populated regions, then the numbers really don't matter anymore. I'll agree with you, on that.
Oh, sure.
Also, I mean, at the end of the day, it still makes the long range forecast wrong. But that's the argument among us in the weather forecasting world. The general public's not going to make that distinction. Also, it's the forecast leading up to those landfalls that matter more than the seasonal forecasts. It's those are the forecasts that actually save lives, and that really pretty much sums it up. I think it spoke very well. And I did read earlier today Ryan Mao on Twitter, who posts a lot and I follow, had opined the fact, and I can't argue this point. Tonga, the Tonga volcanic eruption with the water vapor has, screwed up the stratosphere in many ways, and we've seen so many odd things happen in the since that eruption, particularly in the last year or so. And I suspect that we're probably going to see more odd things happen going forward. And maybe this is one of those oddities, Joe. We had an El Nino year last year with a strong El Nino that produced the fourth most active hurricane season on record in the Atlantic Basin. And El Ninos are supposed to be not not unfavorable for tropical cyclone development. So now the opposite seems to be happening.
Yeah, and we've been talking about the Tonga volcano for a long time, and this is one that is probably going to be providing significant changes to the atmosphere, or having a significant effect on the atmosphere, not just for the last couple of years, but I've seen some papers say it could be up to 8 years after the eruption. That
Hmm.
weird thing. So more weirdness to come, I would suppose.
In total agreement with you on that one. Okay, let's go. We go back to the map here, and let's just run through the GFS really quickly, and you'll see that we've got this big trough that's moved into southeastern Canada, brought down the cool shot of air. The ridge kind of tries to migrate to the middle as that trough pulls out, but the stronger part of the ridge is along and off the west coast. Another deep trough comes down at the end of the week. You can see it there diving down into the Great Lakes and cutting off in northern Michigan. That's a pretty wrapped up upper low that for this time of year, and that's going to bring it's bottoming out in that trough somewhere around 85 degrees west. So it probably means that we'll have a cold front that will approach and some sort of slow moving front at that. 'Cause it's going to take a couple of days for that trough to play through. And then that lifts out. Now you got sort of the ridge in the middle and a little troughing in the west. But, it's just kind of a bizarre looking pattern overall. Uh, Beyond early next week. So we'll have to just wait and see how it goes. In the meantime, what we can say for this week, anyway, is that this big high is going to make things really nice in the eastern part of the United States through at least Wednesday. We're going to get an onshore flow, starts on Thursday and then kind of strengthens a bit as we go into Friday. So we'll have to take a look at this and see whether that may mean some clouds coming in toward the end of the week. And then by Saturday, as this deep trough dives into the Great Lakes, you've got all that Gulf moisture that's sitting down there gets picked up and gets shot up the eastern seaboard. So it looks like some rain coming and maybe some heavier rains for Saturday, lingering into Sunday before weather conditions improve after that.
And we'll see. From what the Climate Prediction Center is trying to suggest, they're saying that while we'll be in a period of below normal temperatures for a while, nice and cool or whatever, as we get toward the middle and especially the latter part of this month, that it's going to start getting warm again. And I saw one person say on Facebook something to the effect like, well, we're probably never going to see 90 again. You shouldn't say things like that because, if this pattern does indeed occur, this flip occurs that we do get back into an above normal temperature pattern, weather regime later on in the month, maybe we might not hit 90, but we could go back up well up into the 80s again. So
Oh,
don't.
I'm not going to argue with you on that. There'll be some odd warm days here and there.
Yeah, well, odd is the word to use. Of course, we did have several years ago. I don't have the year in front of me here, but I think it was on October 3rd. We had like 93 degrees, so it's not out of the question we could see temperatures that hot that late in the season. But it's not likely. It doesn't happen very often. But we still could have near 90-degree temperatures well into September, and the flip from the Climate Prediction Center is expected, after mid-month. So we'll see if that does indeed take place.
Okay. Ooh, I went to black. I'm sorry. That was my fault. Forgot to switch. So here we are. Uh, I hope everybody had a good Labor Day holiday weekend. It was kind of laid back here. I really didn't do very much. And, we've gotten some congratulations on your daughter's wedding on the chat board, Joe.
Well, thank you very much for the congratulations. Yes, we did marry off Maria yesterday, and the weather,
Now
which,
you married her off.
well, yeah, it's. I mean, we had been preparing
It's
for the one thing,
it sounds very, I don't know, King
like a
Henry
lottery.
King Henry VIII ish.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it was a nice day. It was a rather humid day yesterday, but the key was that it was an outdoor ceremony, and when it was at 4:57 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time that she and her fiance said "I do," and it was at that moment in time it was probably in the low to mid 80s, moderate to high levels of humidity, but it turned out to be a bright, brilliantly sunny day after a rather cloudy start to the day. She was very concerned that we might get one of these pop-up thunderstorms. She was looking. My daughter likes to look now at the GFS and Storm Prediction Center forecast, whatever. And I think she was concerned that they were still calling for a marginal risk of severe weather into the afternoon hours yesterday. But I had to explain to her. I said, if enough moisture was swept out by the first cold front Saturday night, there really won't be all that much for it to work on, the second cold front to work on or work with to produce showers and storms later on Sunday. And it turned out to be that was the case. And everything turned out to be very, very nice indeed.
Brandon Doherty, thank you for hitting Super Chat and Super Chat tip jar. Let's see if I think I have a Briller Jeopardy here somewhere.
I think
Uh, do you have it?
I think so. I saw Scott Briller sent me something
Yes,
earlier.
you must have it.
Yes. So let me just get it up here and yes. So um on this Briller Jeopardy, weather extremes at Central Park in September. Can't believe it's September already, but here we're into meteorological fall now, Joe. Officially.
I know we are. My favorite time of year, by the way.
Summer is over, at least from the meteorological point of view. So here's our first question tonight, and that is what was the highest temperature ever? Well, this goes hand in hand with what I was just saying, about how it's not impossible to hit 90 in September. What is the highest temperature ever recorded in Central Park in the month of September?
I think there's 100 in there because it happened like early in the month. So I'll say 101.
Oh, so very close, Joe. And you were right.
So
It was early in the month.
so if it's not 101, it's either 102 or 100. So Michael McGuire says 100.
Nope.
Oh, so then Norm Roberts says 102.
And Norm Roberts is correct. September 2nd, 1953, 102 degrees. It was on this day. What is it? 71 years ago. It hit 102 degrees.
Okay.
Okay, here's the second one. What is the lowest temperature?
Bless you.
Excuse me.
The lowest temperature?
Doing that a lot lately. I don't know. It's something in the air, I guess. Maybe a high pollen count today.
Well, late.
What
Actually,
was?
I'm fighting a sneeze off.
Oh,
We're attached at the hip, Joe.
yes, exactly.
We're a
What was?
thousand miles apart. You sneeze, whatever you got, I just got.
What was the lowest temperature ever in Central Park in September?
Gee, that's a tough one. Uh, well, Mr. Ruben Fairchild is on the chat board tonight, Joe, and now he's Ruben Fairchild the Great. He says 39. 39 was the number that popped in my head when you asked the question, so I'm saying the same.
Ringing the bell, Reuben Fairchild the Great, as he's now billing himself, 39 degrees, and it was way back in 1929 on the last day of September, September 30th, 1929, 39 degrees at Central Park.
Ah,
Three, what was the coldest daytime maximum, the coldest high temperature daytime maximum in September?
hmm. Oh, that's a tough one. I'm gonna say, God, would it be a day where it didn't get out of the 40s? I'll say 51.
Oh my God, Joe.
I got it? Wow. I guess that was just an off the top of my head guess. Yes.
September 19th, 1875, the high temperature at Central Park only was able to make it up to 51 degrees. That's the coldest high temperature at Central Park in all of these years of record keeping. So, what was the greatest amount of precipitation in the calendar month of September?
Hmm. We just had Ida. I don't remember what the rainfall total I'm sorry, the greatest amount was it for the whole month?
For the whole month.
For the whole month. Oh, I don't know. I'll say um I'll say 11 inches.
Oh, believe it or not, Joe, that is far, far
Is it?
from the true number.
Oh, so it's like Anthony says 16, Maggie P says 13. They're throwing up round numbers, so you use your judgment there. Whoever comes closest to the round number.
Well, Ruben
Uh,
Fairchild wants to know what year. I'll tell him what the year is. 1882.
ooh, I imagine Vincent Croce at 18 and Tyler Fang at 19. That's got to be too high.
That's too high. Yes.
Okay. So Anthony at 16, Plain Videos at 13, Maggie P's at 13.
Well, I'll tell
Is-
you, for those of you who said 16, and even for William Huber, who said 17,
And Miss Fallerite said 17. So the
okay,
answer is 16 point, and Latex Dream said 16. The answer is 16 point what?
8.5.
Okay.
There you go. And that's it. That's
That's it?
all we have for tonight.
All right. Sounds like a plan. And guess what? We're going to plan to be here tomorrow night. So don't forget, folks, I pinned the link is pinned to the top of the chat board. If you shop on Amazon, use the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast link there as your starting point. And whatever you buy, Amazon will throw us a little bit of coin back so I can get a couple of cigars and you know whatever. So anyhow, we do appreciate your support of the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And we'll be back tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Night, night.
Good night, folks.